Hello, my name is David Rees-Jones, and in this presentation on nature versus nurture, I will be speaking on behalf of the nurture side of the debate. The presentation will begin with a brief introduction to the historical background of the nature versus nurture debate. This will be followed by explanations of how nurture influences behavior in the context of psychological approaches and psychological mechanisms, with an inclusion of empirical examples to support these explanations. The presentation will conclude with an evaluation of the nurture side to the debate. Historically, the nature versus nurture debate began with English writer, philosopher, and scientist Sir Francis Galton, who first coined the term nature versus nurture during the 1860s and was a staunch advocate of nature for explaining human traits and behaviour. Sir Francis Galton was influenced by the evolutionist theories of his half-cousin Charles Darwin and his 1859 publication On the Origin of Species, and was also influenced by the theory of eugenics, which sought to improve human traits such as intelligence via selective breeding. On the other hand, Enlightenment philosopher and physician John Locke advocated for the nurture side of the debate and was influenced by the empiricist notion of the mind as a tabula rasa or blank slate devoid of innate ideas or capacities, which is then imprinted upon by environmental factors to shape individual traits and behavior. To give a definition of nurture, within the context of psychology, nurture refers to environmental or exogenous factors which contribute towards behavioral development. And according to Babu 2018, environment or nurture refers to the sum of all external conditions other than genetic that affects a person. The human behavior is not very much influenced by the heredity alone, but it is also greatly influenced by the other factors related to environment. Environment, represented by the cultural, social, and situational factors, influence the actual development within the limits of an individual. Examples of these environmental or exogenous factors include childhood experiences, familial dynamics, education, social group, and religious or cultural background. Psychological approaches vary in their attitude and opinions regarding the nature versus nurture debate, ranging from the purely nature theory of biological psychology, which asserts that all behavior is based on nature, to the middle ground interactionist theory of cognitive psychology, which asserts that a complex interplay of both nature and nurture influences behavior, to the purely nurture theory of behavioral psychology and its assertion that all behavior is a result of conditioning or nurture. To advocate for the nurture side of the debate, focus will be placed upon the behaviorist approach, particularly mechanisms of behaviorist psychology and behaviorist empirical studies which support the nurture side to the debate. On this slide, we have a table which indexes all the mechanisms of behavioral modification according to the behavioral psychology: classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and modeling. The first mechanism is classical conditioning, which involves the passive association of involuntary reflexes with other environmental stimuli, a real-life example of which would be how a few painful experiences at a dentist during childhood could establish a lifelong phobia of dentistry. The second mechanism is operant conditioning, which differs from classical conditioning in that the response rather than the stimulus is the focus. In operant conditioning, behavior is modulated through reinforcement, with a stimulus that increases the likelihood of repeated behavior being called the reinforcer, which can be either positive or negative. An example of positive reinforcement through operant conditioning would be giving praise to reward good schoolwork, whereas an example of negative reinforcement would be reacting with anger towards a child who misbehaved. The third and final mechanism is modeling or observational learning, which involves the process of learning from observation and emulating models. An example of modeling is children who observe their parents smoking are more likely to smoke themselves. Other behavior occurs through modeling, such as language acquisition through listening to others and engaging in violence through exposure to aggressive media content. Empirical evidence for the nurture side of the debate exists in the form of the Bobo doll experiment conducted by psychologist Albert Bandura. In Bandura's Bobo doll experiment, a film was shown to three groups of children, the film depicting an adult in a room with a large inflatable Bobo doll. The three groups of children each saw a different variation on the behavior of the adult towards the Bobo doll. Group A saw the adult acting aggressively towards the doll. Group B saw the adult being aggressive towards the doll, but at the end of the film the adult was rewarded with sweets and lemonade by another adult. Group C saw the adult being aggressive towards the doll, but at the end a second adult appeared and castigated the adult. After the film, each group of children in turn was shown into a playroom that contained a variety of toys, including the Bobo doll. The reactions of the children towards the Bobo doll were recorded. The results were that Group C children were the least aggressive towards the doll, but Groups A and B were the most aggressive. The Bobo doll experiment offers empirical support for behaviorist theories such as modeling and explaining behavior, and also supports the nurture side to the debate that environmental factors can influence behavior. To evaluate, there exists some empirical evidence for the nurture side to the debate, such as Bandura's Bobo doll experiment. However, a criticism of the nurture argument is that it does not account for innate behaviours such as the universal facial expression of smiling despite cultural variance. Contemporary psychology, rather than explaining behaviour from a polarised nature versus nurture dichotomy, seeks to understand the complex interaction between nature and nurture. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.